Welcome to the Healthcare Rewritten podcast, where we pull back the curtain on wellness, we challenge the status quo, and we help you to see health through a whole new lens. We are your hosts, Dr. Lena and Dr. Collin. We are both chiropractors and functional wellness practitioners, and we are very passionate about helping you find the root cause to get your health back. Before we dive in, quick disclaimer, this is for educational and informational purposes only. This is not meant to replace a one-on-one relationship with your primary care physician, nor is it meant to diagnose, treat, or manage your health conditions. If you have questions, please consult your provider or practitioner. Now let's get in.
And here we are. We did it.
Yes.
Right? We've been thinking about starting a podcast for over a year now, and we finally pulled the trigger and set it up, and here we are. So again, what we're going to start with is breaking down what the podcast is going to look like. So each and every episode is going to have these core pieces. And then as we go on throughout the episode, we'll tease what's going to be on the next episode. So initially, when we first open the podcast, we're going to have our intro, and then we're going to start talking about news, right? So that's going to be health news. That's going to be news in our relationship, in our life that we feel like sharing with you. And anything that you bring to our attention on social media, any key buzz points, and that's going to be what the news section looks like, right? What's after the news section?
So after that, we'll have one digestible topic each week. So that will change week to week. Each month, we might have a primary focus. For example, this week, we're talking about hormones and how they impact relationships. So if you guys have specific topics that you want us to talk about or dive deep into, please send us a message, send us an email. We'd be happy to get it on the podcast and start giving you our opinions on it.
Yeah, so the first, and we'll tease this right away, right? The first couple episodes is going to be talking all about hormones, female hormones, male hormones, thyroid hormones, how they play a role with one another, how they speak to one another, and how they can impact your daily lives and your relationships. So that's going to be the next couple episodes, right? After we go through that key educational moment, right, 15, 20 minutes or so, we'll definitely start diving into some Q&A. So these are going to be questions that you can send to us via email. These are questions that we get DM'd to us on our TikTok, on our Instagram, on our YouTube. These are questions that get brought up to us in person or through appointments, right? So we'll answer a couple of those in that mailbag segment, and then we'll transition into a different segment, which is what?
Mythbuster.
Yeah, and this was your idea, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about what this segment's going to be about.
So Mythbuster, we will debunk some common myths having to do with health.
Yeah, and they'll most likely be common things that you're hearing about in the news that week, right? So I guess that's something we didn't talk about either, is how frequent you're going to be hearing from us. And the podcasts are going to be released every single week, and we decided to release them on Thursday. So you'll have all of Friday drive to work, and the weekend to digest the episodes, learn about what you want to implement for your health into that upcoming week. Right. And that kind of ties into the last category or that last segment of what we're going to be doing. And that's going to be, what tangible thing can you take away from today, from this podcast? So we're going to give you something to focus on every single week to help improve your health. Right.
Yep.
It's going to be super fun.
Yeah.
And then I guess we can talk a little bit about some bonus episodes as well. At the moment, this is available to everyone, but we will have bonus episodes where we're going to do private interviews with a bunch of special guests. And I believe we have roughly 10 already signed up. So you'll have to stay tuned for that type of information, but those will be bonus episodes that will be released on Saturdays.
Yep.
So
super
that's
fun.
Yeah, that's the breakdown of what the podcast structure looks like. Again, this is something new for us.
Yeah.
And it'll probably change, right? We're super fluid with a lot of this, but right now that's what it's going to look like. If you have any questions or if you have any advice or something that you'd like to see, make sure that you send us an email.
Definitely give us feedback.
We thrive off of that, don't we? Okay. So with that being said, we can go ahead and start diving into the first topic. And that topic is going to be health news. All right, so let's break down the health news. What's going on this week, Lena?
So I actually just saw a post today about Pepsi. They made their own prebiotic soda.
Really? They're trying to dive into the wellness space.
Yeah. With all this Maha stuff going on, they're trying to stay relevant.
Sure.
So what I saw was each of these sodas has 5 grams of, they use cane sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup, which is good. But I mean, obviously sugar is sugar, right? We can talk about that another time.
That's a whole episode in itself.
But there's 5 grams of sugar and only 3 grams of fiber. So is it really beneficial to be drinking that? Obviously, you should not be getting your only fiber source from soda, but it's really interesting that they're trying to just stay relevant in the wellness space because of all of this stuff going on with this health movement.
Sure.
And they created their own prebiotic soda, which I just thought was interesting.
And is it Coca-Cola that is now using organic or cane sugar now instead of
high fructose corn?
Yeah, right.
They switched too just recently.
So you have that movement going into place. But also there's something that Lena and I talk about all the time, and this might be new to a lot of you, but it's something called greenwashing. So do you want to talk a little bit about what that is?
It's pretty much false marketing.
Yeah.
Greenwashing is where these companies will market to healthier individuals by saying, here's a clean product, or here's something fragrance free, here's something all natural. But then when you actually look at the ingredient list, it's kind of like, ew.
Sure. It's marketed to look healthy, but it's not.
It's not.
And that can go not just towards foods, right? But this can go towards cleaning supplies at home. Basically anything that you can buy at the store can be, in quotes, greenwashed.
I feel like a lot of companies these days are going to start capitalizing on that. So we have to be very careful and very critical of reading labels and getting really good at reading labels, not just using apps like the Yuka app, which isn't always 100% accurate. But getting really good at knowing what to look for, like certain ingredients to look out for, that if you're trying to avoid those types of things. Obviously, there are people that are not going to want to read the ingredient labels and that don't care. And that's totally fine. But for those who are very conscious of that sort of thing, you really want to know what to look for.
Absolutely. And I'll say this, probably the easiest way to read labels, or if you have a hard time reading labels at the grocery store, especially with foods, is to buy foods that don't really have labels, right? And that's something we talk about all the time, is eating whole foods. You don't see an ingredient lists on a steak. You don't see ingredients list on a banana or on an apple, right?
Yeah.
All right. So we dove into Pepsi and Coke and a couple of shifts that they have made. Anything else in the news that you saw buzz this week?
The defunding of that research for PFAs in our agriculture.
Yes. So what did you learn about that? And what should everyone be concerned about?
So they cut the budget for that research. I think it was $15 million, which is a lot of freaking money. But $15 million was being dedicated to research in the contents or the amount of PFAs that are being found in farming practices. And that's important because PFAs are what are called forever chemicals.
Yes.
Which they don't degrade over time. So things like plastics, these things stay within our agriculture, our food, our blood vessels, right? And it's concerning because there are babies being born with plastics in their system. They're being born with them because they're in the umbilical cord. And that's concerning because they're already toxic when they're coming out of the womb. And we have to be able to remove these toxins from our products so that we are not ingesting them. And I think that was just something that I was really surprised and I was disappointed in, that they cut that funding, because I think that is really important.
Absolutely. And this is for everyone listening. We aren't always going to agree with everything that's happening right now with healthcare and the healthcare movement. Obviously, I'm wearing a Make America Healthy Again shirt. But it's okay to disagree with some things that they're doing, and this is one of them.
Yeah, I was really disappointed to see that article.
We'll just keep up with the disappointment. I'll talk a little bit about, there was some grants given to farmers and helping local farms, get foods into local schools, to local children, and a lot of those grants have been cut down as well. And on paper, that doesn't look the greatest. And I tried diving into it and I really couldn't find a good reason for it. I know there's a lot of budget cuts, happening right now, but I think it's really important that local small farms are providing to the schools within that area. One, it's really important to eat foods within your region. That's extremely beneficial. And two, it's helping the farmers, right? It's also going towards education for gardening in schools and cooking. So there's a lot of money kind of disappearing for how to cook, how to grow your own foods, and supporting local farmers, which I also don't agree with.
Yeah.
What it looked like on paper is that they're going to start taking away the small farms and funding towards the small farms and using bigger farms to source these foods towards the schools, which can be okay. But again, small regenerative farms, that's what we want to see. That's what we believe is the most beneficial for us, right?
Yeah.
So there are a couple things that we don't agree with as far as the Make America Healthy movement goes. Anything else in the news before we wrap it up?
I think there were a couple new studies that came out that were really interesting.
Oh yes, I did make a video about this. Now, again, when it comes to, here's another disclaimer, when it comes to vaccinations, okay, what we're going to do on this podcast is we're going to lay out what the study looks like, and we're going to give our opinion on how the study was performed. Again, we want to keep these podcasts up and running, so we're not going to give you our exact opinion. If you want that, please go check out Rumble or go check out our Substack. Other than that, there was a new study breaking down aluminum, right, and its connection with autism and autoimmune disease in children. Okay, this study looked at children between the ages of 1 and 5. Now, if you're going to study an autoimmune disease, Lena, where should you be looking? What age group?
20s, 30s.
Yeah. Right? How many of you know an individual who's diagnosed with an autoimmune disease before the age of 5? Not a lot.
Not many, no.
Right?
Very rare.
I'm sure you see it. And I know the study also looked at asthma. And yes, asthma is something that can be diagnosed earlier than the age of 5. But it doesn't give a full breakdown or a full deep dive basically into what health looks like down the road, especially with autoimmune disease. Right. They also did a couple other things that a lot of people are critiquing as far as how the study was performed. They basically isolated the low aluminum and the non-vax together, and they kind of blended it. So you didn't really get a good idea of what was really going on, right? But when you take a look at the news, if you search it right now, you type it in Google, you'll see every news company, you'll see Fox, MSNBC, CBS, every news station is basically saying there's no connection, there's no correlation.
That's crazy.
They closed the book on this. And that's with science, with research in general, there's almost no way you can close a book on anything.
You can't. That's the whole point of science, is to question and re-question and reformulate your studies. This didn't work, or this wasn't good enough, so let's try again.
Sure.
And I agree 100% with the age range. It's so, I don't see a lot of kids with autoimmune disease in our practice. I see most of the people with autoimmune disease are anywhere from their 20s to 40s.
Right.
And that's when it hits them the hardest. And they also don't take into account how other stressors can impact these types of things, right? So a kid that's age 1 through age 5, they don't have a lot of external stressors on their bodies, you know?
Besides, kids are resilient.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like they don't take into consideration anything else. So you can't close the book. You also have to understand, was the baby breastfed? You know, were these kids breastfed? What are they also eating on a daily basis?
Yeah.
Where is the aluminum exposure coming from? Is it just from vaccinations?
The big thing I want to talk about when it comes to studies is you cannot just look at everything as face value. I think it's important to make sure that you're formulating your own opinions based off of the research and everything that you read, right? Reading an article from a major news source, closing the book on something like this is not doing research. It's looking into the research or listening to someone break down the research. I think it's important to have someone break down that research from both sides of the spectrum, from more of the modern medicine side to more of the holistic side. I think there's somewhere in between that you can definitely formulate an opinion and go from there, right? But don't close the book on something like that. It's to look forward. What can we do to improve this study? What can we do to look further at what we might be seeing?
And I think that, like, even when you look back at what you learn in like 6th grade about science, you learn the scientific method.
Sure.
Right. And you have a hypothesis, you develop a study, and then you develop a conclusion from it. Right. But you also there's a difference between theory and law. Okay. So you can't necessarily they probably develop theories from these sorts of things, right? And they try to say, yep, we're done. That was all the studies that we're going to do. But it's not a law that the aluminum doesn't cause health problems.
And there's so many other factors too, like you said, that we can't really isolate, or that researchers can't isolate to, boil it down to see if this is actual fact, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of brought me back to 3rd or 4th grade science class, right?
Yeah,
I
remember my teacher that taught me that specific thing.
What was like one thing in science class back when you were in middle school or even elementary school that just like sticks in your brain? And maybe some people can probably connect with some of this stuff.
I was a super sciencey math nerd all through school. Obviously, that's why I became a chiropractor. But I specifically remember going through each system within the body, the skeletal system, muscular, vascular, organ system, visceral systems. And I remember having to draw pictures of every single organ system. And I just thought that was the best lesson I've ever. I remember that to the day I died, and I was in 4th grade.
That's
when
awesome.
I learned that stuff. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
And the cool thing about this podcast is you get 2 different types of people on here, because that's Lena's answer. My favorite thing when I would go to science class, and I like science, right? Love chemistry. A little bit more later on in school, I really developed my love for science. But initially, my favorite thing about science class was when they wheeled out that TV and I knew Bill Nye the Science Guy was coming on the TV, because that meant I can put my head down and take a nap, or I can goof off. Now, also, Bill Nye, goofball.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll talk about him a little later. Everything that he says, to an extent, we could probably put it in the Mythbusters section.
Yeah.
So, but at the time, that was something I was most excited about, was wheeling out the big TV, right? Where it's not nowadays, right? You could probably watch it on your iPads, or it gets projected on a screen. We had to wheel out this TV cart, right? And maybe sometimes it didn't even work.
Yeah.
So
each classroom had to borrow it every once in a while.
Yeah. So that's funny, but that was my favorite memory from school. So that wraps up what we saw in the news today. If you see anything in the news or an article that stands out to you or speaks to you, and you want us to break it down a little bit further, send it to us. You can send it to us at wesleychapel@thewellnessway.com. You can send it to us via Instagram or TikTok or Facebook as well.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to the next section, which is our educational moment.
Yeah.
Awesome. And we are back for the educational segment of today's podcast. And today we're going to be doing a deep dive into hormones. Again, hormones are something that we can't tackle in one 15-minute segment. So brace yourselves for a long series of this until we cover everything that we want to.
Yeah.
So I feel like the best place to start with hormones is to start with the women. Okay. They're a little bit more complex. The hormone cascade is a little bit different. And I think it's way more important to start making sure that you understand your wife, your mother, your fiance, anyone who's a female in your life. I think that's more important right now than the other way around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think where we should start here is just understanding that men and women are different hormonally. And that's way simpler put in that sentence than it is in reality.
and we can pause here and say cyclic women.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously postmenopausal, yes, but when you are a kid, and I think this is an extremely important topic to cover, when you are a child, before going through puberty, things look very similar.
Yeah. Your hormones are exactly the same until you hit puberty.
Right. So, and I'm not going to dive into that whole discussion right now, but that's extremely important to remember.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So once you hit puberty as a female, you start to develop your menstrual cycle and you become cyclic at this point. And what's important to understand, there's a big distinction between male and female physiology, is that female physiology functions on a monthly cycle, where male physiology functions on a daily cycle.
Yep.
So men are going to have the same exact hormones every single day. It's the same exact cyclical pattern. So men do have their cycle, but it's just daily. But women, it's monthly.
And that disconnect, I don't really want to call it a disconnect, but maybe the differences between the two cycles is really where you can see relationships where people start to butt heads, where people don't understand one another. And if you're not communicating properly on how you're feeling, where you're at in your cycle, how your hormones are responding, you're not set up for success, really.
No.
And name one man besides males in the healthcare profession who do this type of stuff, test hormones, that understands the female cycle. They don't.
No.
Right? You could have the most loving husband in the entire world. Most of the time, they're not going to understand that cycle. What makes it work for them is they're great communicators.
Yeah.
Right? So why don't we start diving into the female cycle? We'll break down the cycle from day 1 all the way down to day 28 or past, and we'll talk about some strategies on how you can start connecting with your significant other.
Yeah. So, well, obviously we discussed that the female cycle is around 28 to 32 days. That's a normal cycle. Anything shorter than that, anything longer than that indicates there's a hormonal imbalance, which is something we will talk about.
How often do you notice or have a patient that comes in where their cycle is longer than 28 days?
As far as average?
Yeah, from your own clinical.
So in my experience, I mean, the patients that I work with are usually very sick.
Sure.
So if they are starting to have more normal cycles, I would say it's closer to that 30-day range as an average. But if they're really sick, some of them have cycles of 42 days. I've had a patient where her cycle was 50 days, which is not good. That's definitely hormonal imbalance. But I would say average wise, it's going to be anywhere from 30 to 32. I think it's less likely for women to have shorter cycles.
Are you still cycling if you are on birth control?
No.
Okay. Can you explain that to me?
Well, we'll talk about that in a Mythbuster.
Okay. So, I was getting too excited. But I feel like that's a pretty good question, because women don't really know. Like, maybe they're not getting their cycle, or they're skipping the placebo, or not the placebo,
the sugar pill.
My apologies. Right.
Same thing.
Okay. So we'll dive into the Mythbuster section.
Yeah.
Okay. I was getting too excited.
But anyway, so like I said, monthly cycles, we have 4 phases to our monthly cycle. We have 1, which is our menstrual phase, which is when you actually have your bleed or your period. Week 2 is the follicular phase. Week 3 is the ovulatory phase, which is where you ovulate to produce a mature egg to get pregnant. And then week 4 is your luteal phase. The luteal phase lasts a little bit longer than a week. I would say it kind of merges into that ovulation phase. It just depends on when you ovulate. But as a rule of thumb, it's roughly going to be week by week.
Yeah. So let's do this. Let's go through each phase. Let's talk a little bit about the science. So what's really happening there? Okay. We're not going to go into extreme depths here. We don't want to bore you. Okay. But let's talk a little bit about what's happening at that point with hormones and what's going on internally. And then let's take a look at what the woman might be feeling at that time. And then I'll ask you a couple questions on, like, as a man, right? What should I be doing? How should I be communicating with you? How should you be explaining to me how you are feeling? And how can we basically tackle this together so our relationship is set up for success?
Yeah. So let's start with the menstrual phase.
Sure.
When you're on your actual period. So when you're bleeding. Now, this is the shedding of your uterine lining. And this is when all of your hormones are at their lowest levels. That's what allows you to shed the uterine lining. It's basically like your body saying, wow, you didn't make a baby, so I'm just going to make you bleed, essentially. Women are going to notice that they feel more fatigued. They're going to have way less energy. This is a very big connecting phase of the cycle. This is where women are going to connect the best with their partner on an emotional level, not necessarily on like a physical intimacy level. You're not really feeling your best self on your period, and that's normal. But we also want to make sure that you're not having symptoms of like cramping, clotting, bloating. All of those types of symptoms are not normal. It's normal to feel less energy. It's normal. It's also normal to feel more emotional. But if we get to extremes, that's where it's a problem. So we want to track that and make sure that we're monitoring that and keeping ourselves in check in that phase.
And that would be a hormonal imbalance of either estrogen.
Yep.
Right?
Estrogen, progesterone. Most of the time it's going to be issues with estrogen and progesterone.
Right. Okay. So you're super tired at that point, right? But you also feel like you can connect. So when I first hear that, right, I guess what I would say is, okay, so she's tired. So maybe I need to step up with some chores around the house. Yeah. Maybe I need to just tackle and be more 70-30 for those couple days.
While they're having their bleed, I think it's good for the man to kind of just step up and take a majority of their percentage of the workload.
Sure.
And, I think that's reasonable. I think that, as a woman who gets her cycle, that's the week in my cycle where I don't want to do anything.
Sure. So males, if you're hearing this and you're listening to this episode, step it up in the beginning of the cycle. Okay. And you said emotionally you can connect too. So like is this a good time to go and have that date, like have a date night? Is this something where you're too tired and your date night needs almost look like it's a movie with popcorn in bed,
Yeah.
or something more low key where it's not you're going to go out on the town, or you're going to go on this big huge vacation or a staycation or whatever it might be?
I would say you're not really going to want to go out in public. I mean, this is just me.
Sure.
I will say from my experience. And you know, as a cycling female, you're going to feel tired. You're not going to feel, you're bleeding. You know, I don't really want to go on a fancy date night when I'm on my period. I want to stay home, watch a movie, relax, have some of my favorite snack foods, eat some dark chocolate, you know, get snuggle, and then go to bed.
I love that. And
Yeah.
I feel so how could you best relay to your partner, besides them catching on that, hey, my wife, my girlfriend, fiance is on her period? Like,
Mhm.
how can that best be communicated?
I think that women just need to tell their partner.
Yeah,
I tell you,
I know.
like, hey, I'm gonna be on my period.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be super tired. I'm not gonna want to do anything. I'm gonna try to get my workload done beforehand. You know, but that's gonna be the best time for rest. So we need to prioritize rest,
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't rest, you're gonna set the rest of your cycle up for failure.
And men, I'm not going to say that you have to completely cater to the female hormone cycle. Like, you're going to have your own hormones that are going to be driving you to do
Sure.
things, and we'll be talking about that on next week's episode.
Mhm.
Right? But there are things where you are going to have to step up. You
Yeah.
are going to have to take sacrifices, and it's not all going to be everything that you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, and even for females, obviously, that you can only control so much.
Sure.
Right? If you're a corporate girly and you're working 9 to 5 jobs, you can't necessarily not go to work the week on your period. But you can also make sure that you do things at home that help you prioritize rest. Whether that's doing lots of Epsom salt baths, or you know, maybe taking it easy at the gym, going for walks, doing some yoga, stretching, things like that. Also, dark chocolate's great while you're on your period. It is phenomenal. Don't be afraid to eat the dark chocolate. Just make sure it's a good brand. You shouldn't be eating actual like M&Ms or like Hershey Kisses, but hopefully all those food dyes are gone soon.
Yeah.
But
It's all still the processing, right? And everything.
yeah. So, you know, some good brands like the Hue chocolate's good, the Lily's dark chocolate's good. I like to do the Unreal chocolate. That's my favorite.
I feel like one of the most surprising things when I tell patients that chocolate, especially dark chocolate, is good for them, or they say, "Can I have chocolate?" and I say, "Please do," they get thrown off. They are so surprised. So, could you break down a little bit why you like chocolate?
So chocolate has lots of beneficial micronutrients in it. It's full of magnesium.
Yes.
Which most people are deficient in. So I'm a big proponent of eating it, right? Also is full of apatokins. I think it's what apatokins, something like that. I can't remember how to pronounce the word, but I'm looking at the word in my head.
Sure.
Which help you produce serotonin, which makes you feel good. It's your happy hormone. It's also full of tyrosine, which is really good for thyroid hormones. So it's all around going to be beneficial.
I love it. Right? Just sourcing is the most important thing.
Yes.
Okay. Let's stay on track. Let's talk a little bit about the follicular phase.
Yeah, so follicular phase, this is where you're going to feel your best.
Yeah.
This is the best. Week 2, let's rock and roll.
Talk to me about how long follicular phase usually should be.
So I would say the menstrual phase is still part of the follicular phase.
Okay.
So your menstrual cycle could last anywhere from 4 to 7 days. So once you're done bleeding, then you enter the follicular phase where your hormones start to rise. Your estrogen start to pop up, your testosterone, your progesterone, everything starts to get elevated. And those estrogens are what's going to make you feel super good. You're going to detox best. You're going to lose weight. You're going to feel energized in the gym. You're going to feel like this is the best time to plan everything. I notice this all the time in my cycle. This is when I plan all my content. This is when I plan all my work efforts. This is when I plan,
the podcast.
Yeah, I did. Or when I plan, different things that I need to work on later in the month.
Sure.
I plan out my schedule. I plan out Vinny's schedule. I plan out your schedule. I plan out the work, all of it. So planning is just super fun during your follicular phase.
Tell me a little bit about libido during this time.
Well, during this time, you're going to notice an increase
Sure.
in your libido, obviously, because those hormones start to rise. Testosterone is going to be the biggest factor in whether or not you have low or high libido. So at this point in time, your libido should be rising. And as a female, it is completely normal to not have a sex drive every single day. You're not a man.
Correct.
You're not a man. Your man should have a sex drive every single day, but you technically shouldn't. And if you do, usually a sign of hormonal imbalance there.
Mm-hmm.
But
and if you're a man, you should not be forcing or having your woman live up to those standards every single day. If so, you need to be doing better.
Yeah. But yes, you should notice your libido start to increase around this time. But like I said, you're going to feel super good. This is when you're going to be like, my tummy's the flattest it's ever been.
What do workouts look like during the follicular phase?
So this is where it's going to be easiest to exercise very intensely. So I personally really like to strength train and weight train. I'm not a big Pilates girl. I'm not a yoga girl. No, thank you. I will skip that, please. So what I do around my cycle is based on the week that I'm in my cycle. I just listen to my energy cues. If my body's like, hey, we can go balls to the wall, I'm going to do it. But if I'm like, hey, I'm on my period or I'm ovulating, I should probably take a little bit of the stress off my body. I'll still strength train. I'll just make sure my rest periods are longer and I might not lift as heavy.
I think that is a general piece you should take away from this podcast is listen to your body. Mm-hmm. Whether that is how you're responding with energy, whether that's a symptom that's coming up, your body is always trying to talk to you, right? Yeah. It doesn't, I mean, we have a mouth, right? But our body can't speak for us, right? Correct. And it's going to speak through symptoms. It's going to speak through our energy levels. It's going to speak through headaches, and we need to listen, right? It's not something where you just slap a Band-Aid on something, you take a medication or over the counter and mask it, mm-hmm. right? This is not me saying to don't take a medication, but you need to be finding out why and listen to your body in that regard, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Follicular phase, back to what you were going to say there. Is there anything else that you want to cover in this section? Maybe why, or break down the science a little bit more. What is happening? Why is estrogen spiking?
So your body's trying to grow a follicle. Okay. So estrogens rise because they're being released by the follicle, which the follicle is growing to become an egg so that it can be fertilized in order to create a baby.
Do you want to, maybe I'll throw up a little diagram too of what this all looks like, but do you want to explain a little bit about what the actual process is? Like what's going on?
So our bodies create other hormones called LH and FSH, right? LH is luteinizing hormone. FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. And you can tell by the name, follicle stimulating hormone, when our brain, our pituitary, releases the FSH, this triggers the follicle to grow, which in turn causes the release of estrogens into our body. And we have multiple estrogens. We can make a whole episode on that too.
Yes.
But FSH causes that follicle to grow. It releases estrogens more and more and more. And that's what causes the buildup on the uterine lining. Okay, so it's there to help to promote a pregnancy, essentially. So we build and build and build and build on that uterine lining. And that is where we're in the follicular phase. Once we get to the ovulatory phase, our progesterone starts to shoot up because of a hormone called luteinizing hormone, which is also released from the pituitary in our brain. That luteinizing hormone causes the release of the mature egg from the follicle, and that allows for fertilization. So if there's no fertilization, then the follicle starts to shrivel up. Basically, all of your hormones start to deplete because it realizes there's no fertilization happening.
So it's almost like a bell curve.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty much like a bell curve.
I'll throw this up there as well for you guys to take a look at.
And they rise at different times. Okay, so estrogen starts to rise in the follicular phase, then they start to dive down a little bit. Progesterone peaks at ovulation, which should be at day 14 of your cycle. It could be anywhere from day 14 to 19. So we call that the fertile window. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when that's happening unless you're taking your basal body temperature every single day, because it should rise by 1 degree.
And the best way, and what's the best way to track if you had to pick an app or pick some sort of resource to track your cycle and to measure your body temperature, what would you use?
I personally use Natural Cycles app.
Okay.
And you can use code WellnessWay for 15% off of their annual plan, plus you get a free thermometer, so definitely take advantage of that. That is one thing I recommend to all my patients. You should be tracking your cycle. I can't tell you how many times I get women on the phone and they tell me, I ask them, how are you tracking your cycle? And they say, oh, I don't.
Yeah, or they say it's roughly this many days.
No, you need to know.
I
You
agree.
need to know these things.
Yep.
This is important to track, because if there could be an off month, if you're trying to prevent pregnancy, especially by using the fertility awareness method, this is the best option. Natural Cycles app is the only FDA cleared, basically quote unquote birth control that does not use exogenous hormones.
Yeah.
Because it tracks your basal body temperature.
So regardless of if it's cycle or bowel movements or sleep, I know a lot of people, what they do is they track how their body is functioning on a daily basis. They like metrics, they like numbers.
Mm-hmm.
To an extent, I think that's important. I don't like my patients who are over the top where they're measuring every single gram of macronutrient. They're using their Apple Watch and tracking their sleep. And if it doesn't show that it's good, but they feel great, then they're like, okay, my sleep's all messed up. But it is important to track how your body is functioning. Do some reflection at the end of the day. See how your body performed, because then that's the only way to know if you're going to improve or what you need to improve.
Exactly.
Okay. So during ovulation, how are you feeling? Tell me about workout and tell me about mood.
So ovulation, you're going to feel super good too. And this is where you're going to be more social. Okay. So this is where you're going to do date night.
Okay.
Ovulation phase is date night. Follicular and ovulation phase is where you can do your date nights. I think personally for me, that's like the best time.
Or like couples date nights or like events.
Or events, social gatherings.
Yes.
If you're a business owner, networking events are I only do networking during my ovulation phase.
I know you do. We almost do that for a reason.
I know. But also your libido is going to be the highest. Okay. It's almost like your body wants you to get pregnant. So it's interesting, but this is when progesterone is going to be at its highest, estrogen will be at its highest, testosterone will be at its highest. And this is, again, where your body releases that mature egg for fertilization. We really, really want to avoid stressors during the ovulation phase, especially if you're trying to get pregnant, because we know that progesterone converts into cortisol, which we'll do a whole episode on adrenals and cortisol and stress hormones. But if we have too much stress on the body, you're going to convert all of your progesterone into cortisol. And that depletes progesterone, which also causes issues with ovulation. A lot of times you can develop PCOS from chronic stress or high cortisol being an issue. But avoiding stressors looks like, again, exercising. You don't want to overdo it during this time. I still strength train. It's just, again, more rest periods, maybe lighter weights, maybe not as long of a workout. But I know a lot of hormone wellness gurus will talk about ovulation being where you should exercise heavy. And I think there's a lot of debate on this topic. And people say there's not a lot of evidence behind it, but physiologically, it makes the most sense.
Sure. And that can't be ignored, that you just shouldn't be doing or avoiding certain types of exercise. There's other stressors out there as well that you want to make sure that you're avoiding. I mean, obviously we talk a lot about foods. We talk a lot about like relationships. I mean, in general, men should not be, or trying their best to not stress out women. But this is an extremely important time to make sure that you're not getting stressed out.
Yeah. And this is the time where we start to look at testing hormones, right? So post ovulation is where we want to test hormones, because that is the best time to test your progesterone levels. I can't tell you how many times a patient comes into my office and says, I've had my hormones tested. They bring me their hormones. I say, when in your cycle did you have this done? And they're like, oh, I was on my period. That's interesting. Why would they only test your hormones on your period? They should be testing them post ovulation, because that is the best time to test progesterone levels, your estrogens, your cortisol, all of that. That is the most important time to do it.
I get it. So, and we can talk a lot about hormone testing down the road. Dr. Lena and I have run hundreds of hormone tests, and we usually don't just look at blood work, but we also like to take a look at urine as well, because we get to look at hormone metabolites and how their lifespan works and how they're being metabolized and processed. If that's something that you haven't had done yet and you're interested, make sure that you send us a DM or a message, and we can walk you through what that testing looks like, and we could even get it sent to you.
Yep.
Okay. But yeah, important on when to get that testing done, right? And that's something that we will talk a lot about when it comes to doctors recommending testing. Most of the time, testing is incomplete, but also, like you mentioned, it's not done at the right time.
Yep.
I see a lot of this, and we'll have plenty of podcasts about mold, but the right time to test for mold, when to test for mold, what things you need to do to prepare your body to test for mold, that alone in itself requires so many different steps.
Yeah. I mean, even testing hormones.
Yeah.
So many people are focused on their hormonal imbalance, but majority of the time, hormones are always a secondary problem. So we don't need to look at hormones first in all cases. Specifically, cyclic hormones like female hormones, right? Well, thyroid hormones, completely different story.
Well, depending, right? But again, sometimes it's like, oh, I'm bringing you labs that I had while I was in the ER. I'm like, these aren't going to reflect your
daily processes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have a little bit of time left here. Let's continue to talk about the rest of the cycle. So
the
what
luteal phase.
Yeah. Dive into it.
Most women hate the luteal phase, and I see this on social media all the time. They're like, "Oh, I'm in my luteal phase," and it's where you're gonna feel those premenstrual syndrome symptoms, like PMS symptoms, whether that's mood swings, irritability, bloating, cramping, acne, diarrhea, even. Those are all signs of hormonal imbalance, and it's not normal to experience PMS. No matter who tells you it's normal, it's not. It's not normal.
Okay. So what is happening at this point in time?
So this is when your hormones start to drop off. Your body realizes, okay, my egg was not fertilized. So now these hormones have to drop off. So you can shed the lining and basically start the cycle process over again. So that follicle becomes what's called a corpus luteum. And it shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, almost like a raisin. And the uterine lining starts to shed, and that's where you develop your bleed, essentially. But all of these hormones start to drop off, and then you prep for menstruation. So at this point in time, you might notice that your energy levels drop, which is normal.
Is it pretty gradual?
It should be.
It should be pretty.
It should be. If it's not, that's where you're going to end up with those PMS symptoms, where it's like extreme. But it should be a gradual process where these things start to die down.
Okay.
Majority of the time, premenstrual syndrome is going to come from estrogen and progesterone imbalances, whether that's progesterone deficiency, estrogen dominance. If you have low progesterone and normal estrogen, it is still estrogen dominance. But I would say most people have issues with estrogen dominance in general, just too much estrogens in their system.
So men listening, something that you can do, obviously pay attention to your own body, but when you start reflecting on yourself and listening or paying attention to your woman's body, and you notice that at one point her sex drive is high, she's being super productive, and then things start to change, right? Don't take it to heart. This probably has nothing to do with you at all.
Yeah.
You could probably agree with that.
Yeah.
She is starting to get tired. Her hormones are starting to deplete, and you need to respond accordingly. You don't need to play the victim or play the martyr and say, oh, there's something wrong. You need to go with the flow of her hormones.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Because at this point, at this point in the cycle, the luteal phase, this is where you're going to want to get work done. This is where you're going to do all of the things that you planned in your follicular phase. So just sit down, grind, work during this time. Because again, you're prepping your body for menstruation. So again, this is a really good time to do more intense exercise, but also listen to your body. Listen to the energy cues. In the beginning of the luteal phase, you'll probably be like, oh, I'm so energized. I have so much energy. And then all of a sudden towards the end, you're like, man, I am dragging today. I have no energy. I don't want to do anything. Okay, so your body's getting ready to have your period. You might notice you're a little bit more emotional during this time too. So just listen to your body and rest. That's the most important thing.
What is your key takeaway what is a listener's key takeaway from this? Like, what can they take and bring to their husband, or what can they take and bring to their wife and say, hey, I learned this. What should I do?
Your man should understand that when he's with you, he's with 4 different people, technically.
Yeah.
You're going to feel like a different person week to week, and that's fine. That's normal as a woman. But again, we should pay attention to the extremes. And I guess the biggest takeaway is to track, monitor, pay attention to how you feel and go with how you feel.
So tracking how you feel, also tracking your cycle, and then being able to communicate that to your partner so they know where you're at, right? As a male, it is your responsibility to listen to this and understand how these hormones work. I'm not asking you to be a scientist or a doctor, but understand what's going on and how your woman will most likely be feeling during that time. Now, again, every woman is different, and this is textbook. So if your wife or significant other has endometriosis or has PCOS or has hormonal imbalance, this is not going to look textbook all the time. Right? So again, make sure that you understand the basics of this so you can communicate properly with one another. Right? Yeah. Okay. So next week, we are going to be talking all about the male cycle. We're going to be talking about what that looks like on a daily basis and how we can best communicate with our significant others and how they can take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We are moving on to our next segment, which is the
Mythbuster
section. Okay, we are now moving into our Mythbuster section. This is going to be something that we do every single week, breaking down a myth that we see in the news or a common myth or misconception. If you want to share a myth or a misconception that you see floating around, make sure that you send us a message or an email at wesleychapel@thewellnessway.com. So, Lena, what myth are we going to break into first?
That birth control balances your hormones.
Okay.
Biggest myth ever. So frustrating too, because I personally was on birth control in the past. I was told it was my only option to manage my painful periods. My periods used to put me on my knees. I would throw up because my cramps were so painful. And my parents did the best thing that they knew how. They took me to my OB. They said, okay, we're going to put you on birth control. And I was on it for about 2.5 to 3 years before I stopped taking it. But birth control doesn't balance your hormones. Okay. They told me it would. But if we look at it physiologically, what it does is it shuts off your body's natural hormone production. Okay, so your symptoms go away in majority of cases because you're not producing any hormones, but that's just a band-aid. It's masking the actual problem. It's not fixing it. So when you go off birth control, what's going to happen?
Things are going to come back.
All of your symptoms will come back, which again, it's not fixing anything.
Do you see that birth control is being prescribed to your patients for other reasons other than contraception or for, in quotes, irregular cycles?
Yeah.
Skin is a big one,
yep,
right?
Acne. I've seen it prescribed for people who are going down the IVF path. They have to for their protocol, which I think is insane. But it's because they have to manipulate the hormones in a specific way, which again just shows that birth control is manipulating your hormones. It's not balancing them. It's shutting them off completely. So I run plenty of hormone tests on patients on birth control, and they come back menopausal. Like women my age, mid-20s, late 20s, I test their hormones and their hormones are menopausal because they're taking birth control.
And when you come off birth control or you're finally not needing it anymore for X, Y, or Z reason, usually what women find out is that they're still in a heap of mess.
Yeah.
Right? They still have hormonal imbalance. They still have those same heavy periods or, the pelvic pain or whatever it might be.
Acne comes
back. The acne comes right back. Issues with weight. So again, this whole thing is not for us to say, hey, take birth control or not take birth control. We will never be able to say to take a medication or not take a medication. But what should individuals know or women know before taking birth control? Like, what options are there?
Yeah. There are tons of options, right? So if you're taking birth control to prevent pregnancy, there are ways to prevent pregnancy without taking exogenous hormones. You could do the fertility awareness method, which is basically tracking your cycle. Big thing. Also looking at your cervical mucus, that tells you, it's a big telltale for if you're ovulating or not. If your discharge changes, I know this might sound gross to some people, but whatever. This is physiology and science, right? Yeah. The cervical mucus changes based off of your hormone levels. So if you're ovulating, your cervical mucus will change. Tracking your basal body temperature, that is probably the easiest thing you can do. And I used to think that tracking your temperature meant you had to stick a thermometer in your vagina every day, but no, you don't. It's just a mouth thermometer, right. Which is really funny, but very simple thing. That tracks your ovulation. Also, just making sure you're understanding how long are my cycles. Okay, this is a very simple thing. If your cycles are 30 days, you have a fertile window. It's about day 14 to day 20. Just abstain.
And this is if you have a normal cycle,
yes.
which is not going to apply for everyone, right? So that's where you want to make sure that you're getting the right steps in place to have that, in quotes, normal cycle.
Yeah.
Another thing that you can definitely do is wait for marriage. I'm not going to dive into religion and our opinion on that, but a lot of individuals are getting put on this at such an early age for contraception when, in my opinion,
the culture, there's a big culture shift.
100%.
Yeah, compared to when we were kids versus now, very different time.
100%. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to talk about as far as birth control go?
So I would say that birth control doesn't come without side effects. Is one thing to understand. It is also a class 1 carcinogen. So we need to understand that it does cause cancer. If you are noticing that you take birth control and you start to develop more symptoms, like weight gain's a big one, thyroid issues, it does cause thyroid imbalance. It causes gut dysbiosis and leaky gut, causes autoimmune disease, it causes mineral depletions. So again, just because you are preventing one thing from happening doesn't mean that you're not causing other issues.
That is so interesting. So tell me, you've been on birth control, right? Have you been, which ones have you been on?
I only did the pill.
Okay. So if you can remember, walk me through what happened at that doctor's appointment. What did you go in and say? What happened? And what came up of it? Because I mean, right now, and I'm sure this happens to a lot of women, there's so much telehealth. You can probably send your doctor a message and get put on something.
Yeah.
So tell me what your experience was, and was there any informed consent? What did that look like?
I believe, when did I go in? I think I was 18 when I went in to the OB, because again, my periods were excruciatingly painful. So I guess I should preface this. I was a swimmer all through high school. Most swimmers are exercising so much, there's so much stress on their body, they lose their period. Same thing can happen with runners.
Chlorine as well.
Yeah. But I would only have my period for 3 months out of the year, my entire time through high school. I got my period very late. I think I was like 15. And so I would have my period 3 times a year, which is not good. And so when I went to college, I stopped swimming and I played softball, which was way less stress on my body. But I started to get my period monthly, and it became excruciatingly painful to the point where I wouldn't go to class. I would lay in bed all day. I'd have to take Midol. I couldn't take Advil because it made my periods heavier. And so my parents decided that it was because it was affecting my day-to-day life that I should go to the OB. And I went to my OB for my normal, regular checkups and things like
Which
that.
Which is what the standard American female would do in this circumstance, without knowing anything else.
Exactly. My parents did what they knew how.
Sure.
So I went to the OB. I remember going into the appointment. They did their speculum. They checked my cervix. They checked all the things. And then said, okay, how are your periods? I said, they're pretty painful. Okay, we'll put you on birth control. And that was it.
Yep.
I didn't get any informed consent. Really?
Any plan to get off of it? Or
no explanation on how it could affect my fertility. No explanation on any of that. And as an 18-year-old, that's not something I'm thinking about either.
Sure. Which isn't wrong to think about that, right?
Right, but that, I didn't know any better. And it caused a whole slew of issues for me once I started taking it. And they switched my birth control probably 3 times. And it got to the point I was bleeding every day for 3 months straight. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I stopped taking it. And then I didn't take it for about 2 years. And then I started taking it again for another 2 years after that. And then eventually it got to the point where my anxiety was so bad that I couldn't go to the grocery store by myself. I would literally leave my cart in the middle of the aisle because I would get so anxious and I would have to leave.
And I'm sure you're not the only one that has felt like that before.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
What would you tell young girls or women who are on birth control right now? What would you say would be the best thing to do if they wanted to start looking into not requiring birth control?
So there's definitely a process. You need to give yourself at least 3 to 6 months before you stop taking birth control, if that's the choice that you decide to make. You need to prep your body for detoxing from birth control, because
do you think it's important for them to talk with their doctor and let them know that they're getting off of that, or like
yeah, I think that's
if there's
important.
other medications involved,
yes,
right?
Yeah, I think that's important. I I personally didn't talk to my OB just because I was rubbed the wrong way. Basically, I walked in one day and I said I want an IUD, and they said, okay, we'll schedule you.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't ask me any questions, didn't nothing, and I just was rubbed the wrong way about that. So I decided that, hey, I'm just gonna stop, and it was not a good idea for me to just stop because you can develop post birth control syndrome.
Sure.
So we want to be very careful.
And we do have a resource that is available for you guys. It is our Detoxing from Birth Control resource. It is not the only thing that you should be using, but it is a great guide to help guide you along the way.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yep, and we'll link that in our description.
Awesome. Okay, is there anything else that you want to say before we move on to the mailbag?
No, that's pretty much covers it.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, welcome to the mailbag section of the episode. Again, if you want to ask us questions, please send us a message or an email at wesleychapel@thewellnessway.com, or send Lena or I a DM on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. Mm-hmm. So let's dive into it. What was the first question that was sent to us today?
This one we kind of already answered. What's the best way to test hormones if I'm still cycling?
Okay, so the best way to test hormones that I would say would be to pair blood work with urine. I know there's a lot of testing out there that looks at tissue levels, which would be more saliva. I don't think that's the first place that you usually jump to.
Not for cycling.
So usually something like a Dutch test, and then running a full blood work panel, not just on estrogens, but also taking a look at other hormones. So thyroid hormone is important. FSH, LH, all that we mentioned earlier is also important. And then comparing what those look like to other lab values that can show signs of stress, because again, hormones are usually secondary issues. So if you're going to run labs, get a good understanding of what everything else or what the big picture looks like too, especially metabolic health.
Yeah, I think that's a big point.
Right?
Yeah, look at the whole forest, not just the individual trees.
Yeah. Okay, what else do we have?
What is the best time in your cycle to talk about hard things in your relationship? So I think I kind of touched on this earlier too.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and answer this one?
Definitely the menstrual phase. So that, like I said earlier, that's the best time where you're going to connect with your partner the best. And I think that's a really good time to have conversations with your partner. As a woman, as a male, there's a specific time of day that's going to be best to have those types of conversations.
So, well, and we can break it down, right? Rome is not built in a day. So maybe connecting and having that emotional conversation about what might be going on or what needs to be done. And then when you are in your follicular phase and you're in your planning phase, then we can start putting things into action.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Or planning for them. And then the doing would be later on, like we mentioned.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in the relationship is the communication part. It's just knowing how to communicate, so that way you can plan better and that way you can do better.
Let's do one more question, and then we'll dive into the key takeaway and a tangible thing that people can focus on this week.
This one's funny. What hormone-related quirk have you learned about yourself since we've been together? What have you learned about me as far as my hormones go since we've been together? Well, it's different now because I'm postpartum, so my hormones are a little
weird. Yeah, and when I first met you, one thing that you talked about too is I knew you and we were dating when you were on birth control, when your hormones were all over the place. You had a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, I was crazy.
Going through that with you was definitely, a challenge, and I didn't know anything. Like we were still going through school and we don't know what we know now. Yeah. Something that I guess I learned about hormones or your hormones is definitely the planning.
Yeah.
Right? I would always try to plan every single week, right? Or come up with a game plan. My testosterone's really high. I want to plan things out. And there were some weeks that you just couldn't. And I would hold that against you. And that was probably one of the worst things that I could have done for you.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it was stressful, but
it's okay.
You managed. I mean, and like I said, it's not going to be picture perfect for every person, but you can plan this stuff out. Like you can plan around your cycle. You can.
And you should.
You should. Yeah. Like I personally, would plan like big events around ovulation. Like I'm only going to do these events during my ovulation phase because I'm going to feel the most outgoing. I'm going to feel the most social. Any other week of the month, I'm going to be super reserved and people are probably going to look at me like, what's wrong with her? But you should plan things around your cycle. I plan my work around my cycle as best I can.
What would you say is something for me that you would say about hormones? And we'll dive into male hormones next week, but is there anything that you could say? I feel like something comes to mind.
You never want to talk about anything at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like anything work related at the end of the day, you're like, no. You're shut off. You're like, I don't even know what you're saying right now.
Yeah. How many men listening to this right now could agree that when you're done at the end of the day, you're done?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this doesn't mean, okay, at 8:00, every man shuts their brain off and stops. Okay. That's not what this means, right? There's times, especially when your partner needs an extra help, or maybe you need more help with finances. It is the man's job to step up and do those things. To take less sleep, to work harder through the night. It's the male's job.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, and I'm not perfect. I've been learning
Nobody's
these things.
Perfect.
Okay?
Nobody's perfect.
And that's really what a lot of this will come down to. You'll learn that Lena and I practice what we preach, but we're also human. We're also learning through this process too. So
and
it's
we're
us.
New parents.
Yeah.
So
you're along for the ride with us. You can watch us grow, and I want you to grow with us. That's what the podcast is all about.
Yep.
So make sure, again, you send your questions to us. We look forward to them. We will answer between 3 and 5 every single week. If your question is not answered and you have a specific health-related question and you want to work with us, you can definitely schedule an appointment. There's a link on our social media for you to schedule that, or you can call our office at any point in time. One of our lovely staff members will be able to get you on the schedule and get started with care.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the one tangible thing that you can take away from today to better your health for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, we are now into the health homework section. This is where we are going to give you something tangible that you could take home and focus on improving as the week goes on. Okay, now remember that things that you do on a daily basis, they need to be built upon, right? This isn't something that you're going to be able to flip-flop overnight. This is, if you're listening to this when it was released on Thursday, doesn't mean you're going to be a perfectionist at this on Friday.
Professional by Friday.
Professional, that's the word I'm looking for. I'm not editing that out. And again, it's not going to be something that I want you to focus on just for the next week. This is something that we want you to build upon, and I'm not going to ask you to do something super outlandish, right?
No.
Should we decide something together, or should we do 2 individual things? I
think we should have an individual one.
And then people can pick and choose between which one they want to do.
Yeah, you can do it from a male perspective. I can do it from a female.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and start? What's something that you feel like our listeners should take home with and start thinking about doing or start putting into place?
I think all women should start tracking their cycle.
I love that one.
Simplest thing you can start doing. Just track it. You don't have to implement any action steps into each phase just yet. Just learn your cues. Learn how long your cycles are. Do you have mood changes? Do you have PMS symptoms? All of these things are important to monitor, and the best way to do that, like I said earlier, is through the Natural Cycles app. You use code WellnessWay for 15% off their annual plan, plus you get a free thermometer. So highly suggest doing that.
That's a great one. If I had to recommend something, I feel like I'm going to talk to the men here, as you spoke to the woman. I think you should sit down and have a conversation, and I don't care right now where they're at in their cycle, whether they're cyclic or not. I want you to sit down with your significant other, if you have one, and say, I want to help you. I want to understand where you're at in your cycle, and I want you, as you transition through different phases, I want to be able to be there to help you. And I want you to be able to communicate that with me. Whether that's her telling you, okay, right now I'm on my period, or right now I'm ovulating, or you know what, I don't know. being able to do that together is extremely important. So start focusing on communicating with one another. Sit down and have that conversation, because it's going to drastically improve your relationship.
100%.
So men, start talking to your females a little bit more. They're not like you, right?
Right.
Okay, that's what I have for you guys. So 2 easy things, somewhat easy, right? It's not like you have to go buy something or you have to go completely do a 180, right? 2 things that you can do for this entire week.
Yep.
Okay, so take that home and learn from it.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, and that's all we have time for today. So I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Again, if this is something that you enjoyed, make sure that you hit the bell icon so you do not miss an episode. Make sure that you like the video as well. And again, the best way to get this video out and to build our following is to share the video across all platforms. So make sure that you share this to your Instagram stories, to your feeds, so other people can listen to this great information as well.
To your friends.
Yeah, to your friends as well, right? Because it's not easily available, and a lot of people don't have this type of perspective. Okay, so make sure that you share the show. It's the most important thing for us. I hope you learned something, and we will see you all next week. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed our first episode of our Healthcare Rewritten podcast. Make sure that you check out our description for all helpful links that we mentioned in today's episode, and tune in next week where we're going to dive into male hormones. Have a blessed week.